Welcome to the Studio Art Department at Bethany Lutheran College. Bethany is a special place for artists. Here we learn to witness in a visual culture and become good stewards of our God-given talents.
Start with water, and the amount of water and the temperature of water matter. So our mix is going to about double. So we definitely don't want to fill whatever container we're using more than halfway, right? Because then we'll run out of room. So no matter what container you're using, make sure that you've got more than half empty space above it. All right? We can scoop some dry plaster in, and I'm going to put my hand in between and sift that plaster in evenly across that surface. So I can grab and gently sift this in. Notice that I'm spilling, and this is kind of inevitable with plaster. You're gonna kind of make a mess. And so think about your surroundings. I've got plastic on the table, and I'm working on a hard cement floor. Please don't do this in a nice room with carpeting or a rug. You will regret it. All right, as I continue to sift, take a look in here and see what the plaster is doing. Can I get a close-up on that? Now here's what we're looking for. We're watching for dry mountain peaks. Right? So you start to see kind of little land formations in the mix there, but they're sinking and becoming wet, and so I continue to sprinkle in the plaster until those mountains don't sink, until they stay dry. All right? So I just keep on adding, and it gradually suspends itself, and there's enough. Now that tells me, we've got an area here that's starting to stay dry. Keep on adding and slowly watch it. Don't rush this. That tells me that now we're in kind of the range. The plaster can be mixed to different consistencies. There's a lot of food analogies here, so you could think about plaster mixing to warm ice cream consistency, all the way to maybe like cheese consistency. And it's going to change throughout the course of its setting process. So right now we're adjusting the ingredients, and that will affect how it mixes up, but it's also on a ticking clock. Okay, so this is looking good. I'm seeing a dry mountain range in the center here. If I wanted a tougher, more dense consistency of plaster, I would keep on sprinkling. And then my mix would be a firmer mix. If I wanted something paintable, if I wanted a real sort of drippy, sloppy consistency, I'd stop here, or maybe add just a little bit less. It is possible to not add enough plaster, and then you really have a weak mix that won't hold, it won't last. So you do have to kind of hit this right. It takes a little bit of experience. It takes just kind of getting used to it. I'm going to add just a little bit more in there. I'm using my judgment. Now there's options for how to mix. Really, the best thing to do is to stick your hand in there and squish it around so that you know there's no lumps. But that gets your hands all messy. If you decide to do that, I highly recommend either putting something oily in your hand, like petroleum jelly, or wearing some sort of a glove, latex, or some sort of a glove to protect your hands. Otherwise, it gets all over in your hands. Another way to mix nicely is to use a fork. Whatever tool you put into a plaster mix, I recommend getting it wet first. That just makes it easier to clean later. All right, so here we are. I'm gonna mix with this fork. And this feels like a cooking show. I'm just gonna mix this up. And try to make sure that I've got a thorough combination of the two. The timer just started. Once I mix this plaster, now it's on its way to setting. The timer, it's hard to put an exact time on this because what's happening is I've triggered a gradual transformation. Full hardness might be a day away, but sort of a solid, transferring from liquid to solid is within 15 to 20 minutes. You have an open time of about 15 minutes. So that timer is now ticking. It's really important that you never, ever, ever pour plaster down a drain. Never pour plaster down a drain. Why? Because it sets underwater. So if I would pour this down the drain, it would continue, even if I rinse, it would continue on its path to becoming solid, and it would cause all kinds of problems. Instead, let it set. For cleanup, let it set and dry, and then crack it out in the